117 cardinals who are eligible to vote in the next conclave will fly in from all over.
Only white smoke through the chimney signifies a new pontiff.
Now everyone is asking who is the new pope and where does he come from?
Sibi nomen imposuit Franciscum.
Francis? It's the first Francis in the history of the Catholic Church.
The Pope is elected. That's all. You may say nothing exciting, right? There's a lot of excitement, you know. I wish everybody had been here for that.
Someone by name, Jorge, was elected. The way he walked in, basically very, very serene. And the fact that he just said, buonasera, good evening, like, to the people. So I think that really warmed up people's hearts.
Fratelli e sorelle. Buonasera.
And immediately he entered into conversation with the people, the crowd on St. Peter's Square.
Questo cammino, vescovo e popolo.
And the crowd was ecstatic. And he was announced as Pope Francis.
No pope had taken that name. It was kind of almost thought to be a taboo, and it's kind of been the guiding posts for this papacy. The pope who cares about the poor, the pope who cares about the environment.
So the choice of the name Francis was, in a way, programmatic of the mission. You know, Saint Francis was a man so close to the people, to the natural world.
Pope Francis came to the papacy in 2013 after the long period of scandals in the Vatican. Pope Benedict XVI was the first pope in 500 years to resign the papacy, and I think people were looking for a different sense of direction.
The mandate which the College of Cardinals gave him at the beginning, that was to reform.
A program of reform, but with this idea that the reform begins and the call for the Church is to put at the center those who are far away, who are the most suffering and the poorest.
And in changing things, there can be difficulty, there can be resistance, there can be opposition. But you still have to change things. And changing things because there are resistance or opposition doesn't make you rebellious of anything. I see him carrying on a mandate.
I believe that Pope Francis was called to rebuild, like St. Francis, this house. And this house is our planetary home, our common home, and our common human family.
This Pope is, above all, the Pope of the unexpected. He's the Pope of surprises. Nobody knows quite what he's going to do next.
But Pope Francis decided he would officiate at a juvenile detention center in Rome. The Pope washed the feet of 12 teens from all religions, including 2 Muslims. Another surprise was that among the 12 were 2 girls.
What really makes us fully human is our capacity for empathy. And Pope Francis is a great example of that.
Come vorrei una chiesa povera e per I poveri.
When the Pope speaks, he speaks with the voice of not only himself and of the Catholic faith, but of 1 billion plus believers. 25% of the healthcare in the world is provided by the Catholic Church. And so their network is almost unrivaled around the world.
He's so at home with the poor. I mean, he's joyful, he listens to them, and what really struck me also was here he has really brought in a revolution of tenderness.
Francis has made clear that during this holy year he will continue to champion the poor, the marginalized, and the oppressed.
The area he comes from is an area with incredible challenges of poverty, of global warming challenges. He's the first pope in over 1,000 years who's non-European. He is clearly a son of Argentina.
Jorge Bergoglio grew up in a family which was pretty poor. I mean, it wasn't destitute in any way, but it was very lower middle class. He grew up as the child of immigrants in Buenos Aires. So from the very beginning, he grew up with the stories of poverty, of displacement, which characterized the immigrant story.
His grandparents had come from northern Italy, the Piedmont region. And clearly this impact of watching his grandparents adapt to a new life has had a significant impact on his life and has left him with a sincere understanding of the difficulty migrants go through.
Tens of thousands of refugees and migrants risk the perilous voyage on barely seaworthy vessels that ply the waters between Lampedusa and the North African coast.
His first trip as Pope was in Lampedusa to be with refugees and migrants who are suffering.
And they're in these camps, and Pope Francis is there.
He took some families to the Vatican so that they could be accommodated here in Rome. So he's speaking also with his gestures, with his way of being.
Let us treat others with the same passion and compassion with which we want to be treated.
More and more, we're realizing migrations over the last 10 years and 20 years even, as a result of horrendous environmental problems. There are well over 100 million climate and environmental refugees now. And by 2050, they think 1.3 billion people will be part of this migration community.
He felt the pain, he understood, this is God's creation. So he connects it to the climate crisis, to human suffering.
Since his rise to head of the Catholic Church, Pope Francis's papacy has been nothing short of transformative. No issue has captured his attention more than the dire fate of our warming planet.
Called Laudato Si, or Praised Be, on the care of our common home, Pope Francis's encyclical on the moral aspects of climate change and protecting the environment.
Laudato Si is one of the most important documents of our lifetime. It's an encyclical, which means a letter to Catholics, Christians, and all religions, and people without faith.
The central message in the Laudato Si is the human person and his world.
It's considered a very important teaching document, and what he has done is absolutely elicit and spark a new moral force of justice for people and care for the environment.
This is the biggest emergency that humanity has ever faced.
It was quite powerful that the Pope, in the highest leader of the Catholic Church, the leader of 1.3 billion Catholics around the world, said quite clearly, no, this is happening, it's real, we need to do something about it.
Science has facts, but we need values, and we need the sense of how do we inspire and encourage humans in their daily life, in their sufferings, in their trials, and so on. So that combination has made the Pope quite unique.
Being from Latin America, being from a country like Argentina, and what he has had to live through that have taught him to be the man he is today.
If you really want to understand Pope Francis, you need to understand that he has been shaped also by the process done in Latin America.
And To understand that is to understand a large part about what makes Pope Francis so distinctive. He brings with him the experience of his nation, but also of the Church of Latin America. Here is a man who understands the vulnerability and the chaos of people's lives and has the experience of entering into that.
Argentina, the second largest country in South America, faces an uncertain future. The military has overthrown President Perón after the nation's economy spiraled out of control. Perón, the savior of workers and the poor, has been sent into exile, but promises one day he will return and lead Argentina to become a world power.
The young Jorge Mario Bergoglio, as a teenager, grew up in the 1950s in a time of great political ferment.
Pope Francis has worked as chemist in Buenos Aires. I think it's interesting that before entering the Jesuit, he had an experience as a young guy, an experience of work. So we can say he had an experience of life, He was not trained in a minor seminary since the age of 12.
Jorge? Are you going to the tango bar after work?
Of course. Sí, tuvo una novia, sí, tuvo alguna chica, pero bueno, él era muy cuidadoso con su vida. Hay cosas que eran muy personales de él y por ahí no las transmitía.
Señor Esther. Thank you.
Esther Ballesteros de Careaga was a Paraguayan woman who worked alongside him in the chemistry laboratory. She was a militant, a left-winger, and he deeply loved and admired her.
Did you analyze the final batch?
The results were the same for all the batches. So I assumed the results would be the same for the final batch.
What if your assumption is wrong? What if the final batch is different? What if there is an impurity? This is your job, Jorge. You're paid to do analysis, not to guess.
I'm sorry, Señor Esther.
When you become a doctor, remember, mistakes cost lives.
This pope had an experience of working in science and became the first pope to clearly enunciate the Church's agreement with the scientific consensus that there is global warming, that the planet is going through something catastrophic that needs to be addressed.
Non può e non deve esistere contrapposizione tra la fede e la scienza.
It is the philosopher Francis Bacon, who says that God gave us two books. The book of the Bible to pray with, and the book of nature to research and to discover Him in the wisdom and everything that is made. So for us then, that is the first term. Science is not opposed to faith. There are two pathways towards the same truth.
Pope Francis realized that we need to listen to the scientists. And scientists have been speaking about this for more than 50 or 60 years. I think of Rachel Carson, 1962, the silent spring. I mean, not just the climate crisis, but the fact that we are destroying our common home. If we want to respond to the ecological crisis, the cry of the earth, we need to respond to the cry of the poor. That's why Pope Francis, he says, it is one cry. The cry of the earth and the cry of the poor are closely, intimately linked.
Good work.
Thank you, Señor Esther.
How are your medical studies going?
I made a mistake. It's not my calling.
We all make mistakes. It's how we learn. Do you know what you want to do instead?
I do. But my mother, she doesn't understand.
Well, then you have a choice. Either you follow your head or you follow your heart.
His first boss, when he was at a laboratory of chemistry, it was a woman. And I think that he's really aware of the importance of women's gift, we can say, and that he has benefited from it.
Sister Nathalie Beccar is a French sister in the Catholic Church. She basically carries the standing of a bishop, although she is not ordained a bishop. Very likely she's going to be the first woman to be appointed to a full voting membership of the Synod of Bishops.
What was very interesting after my appointment, I have received so many messages from all over the world, and not only from people in the church, also people in the economical world or political world, and they say, oh, you know, what we see is that if even the church can change, it gives hopes that all kind of organization also can change. So it's I think it's a kind of prophetic gesture and courageous gesture from Pope Francis.
The way Pope Francis has acted towards women has been one of these things where he has cracked a door, and when that door is a bit open, the floodgates will end up opening.
Certainly, we've seen a lot of movement on the issue of women in leadership in the church. Pope Francis is making the church more horizontal. And what Pope Francis is doing with this synod process is trying to find a way to be in a conversation with every Catholic around the world. Sister Nathalie Beccar helps coordinate and organize the synod process. That's the greatest listening process probably in the history of the entire world, not just the church.
Synodality is very simple. It's about journeying together. So it's a way to look at the church.
After the first phase of the listening process, they came together with a document, and what was extraordinary were the things that were mentioned in that document. Things such as the call for women's ordination in the church, the call for better ministry to LGBT persons, and for blessings for same-sex couples.
I remember when it was breaking news that he had told me, the fact that you're gay is okay.
I said, Holy Father, I'm not a saint, but I certainly want to be a good person. And he said, Juan Carlos, God made you like this. God loves you like this.
We're taught that popes are infallible. They don't make mistakes. Pope Francis makes mistakes and acknowledges his mistakes.
I think Pope Francis's trip to Chile is an insight into a leader who is able to acknowledge when he has done wrong and to try to make a change and to try to be better.
In 2018, he went to Chile, and it was very obvious that people didn't go to see Pope Francis. People realized that the level of abuse that was happening in Chile and then all over Latin America and around the world. Streets were quite empty. So in the plane back, he's asked, why did this happen?
We asked the Pope the same question, I think 3 times, which was essentially, why are you believing the bishop and not the victims? What's shocking is that the Pope came home to Rome, clearly recognized he hadn't acted in a way that was right, and he sent one of the church's leading sexual abuse investigators to Chile, a Maltese archbishop named Charles Scicluna.
And they elaborated 2,600 pages of testimony and what had happened. And he wrote a letter to the world saying, I have committed a grave mistake.
Juan Carlos and the Pope had an individual meeting. It went on for several hours at the Vatican. Juan Carlos brought pictures for the Pope to see of what he looked like as a child when he was abused.
I never thought I'd have that opportunity. I was telling myself I had to be extremely brave, and he said, Juan Carlos, I want to say sorry in the name of the whole Catholic Church, the Universal Church, for what they've done to you. And, you know, I started tearing up a bit, you know, because it's still emotional, you know, when I see those things and when I hear that. And he said, I want to apologize to you personally because I made it worse with you.
And so that's when we see the Pope decide to fire basically all of the bishops of Chile. And later, a few years later, we see the Pope appoint Juan Carlos Cruz as a member of the Pontifical Commission for the Protection of Minors.
Never had anybody apologized that way to me. He helped me appreciate everything I have to live for.
When we talk the legacy of Pope Francis, I think that's one of the big legacy points, to recognize he'd done something wrong and recognize he needed to do something different.
Pope Francis, he is someone who walks towards places and situations where others want to run away.
Bergoglio was very attracted to the Jesuits. He saw in them a kind of military quality, a discipline. He liked this because he saw that was giving him something that he lacked in his life.
Bergoglio, as a Jesuit, spent the 1960s being formed and studying at a time of enormous political change, of revolution, in fact.
The American nation cannot permit the establishment of another communist government in the Western Hemisphere.
1969, the year that Bergoglio is ordained, is also when various guerrilla groups in Argentina come into being, inspired by the Cuban Revolution, frustrated by the military dictatorship. They want Perón to come back. They want a revolutionary version of Peronism.
The much-awaited return of exiled President Perón has resulted in violence. At least 13...
Bergoglio became a priest and then became the leader of the Argentinian Jesuits. At a time of social chaos, the left and the right took to the streets, took to guns. And then within the church itself, there was a deep division in the Jesuits in Argentina between the left-wing ones who wanted to work with the poor, called the slum priests, and the more conservative ones who wanted to just educate the children of the elite.
I think it's important to note that Jorge Bergoglio was elected the head of the Jesuit province in Argentina, at a very young age. And clearly that was an enormous task for a person of that age, and in a time of immense change and immense trial.
When the Jesuit headquarters in Rome appointed Bergoglio, they wanted him to bring the Jesuits together and to curb the extremes of the slum priests.
Y ahí comienzan los primeros enfrentamientos entre Jorge Bergoglio como autoridad y Orlando Llorio y Francisco Yalix. Quiero aclarar que ellos vivían en la villa, viviendo como la gente pobre de la villa. Ellos vivían ahí.
Bergoglio didn't have a problem with priests being in the slums, but he did have a problem, I think, with that kind of ideology.
En mi investigación, los testimonios que yo recogí de la gente, de los jesuitas que trabajaron con él, son contradictorios. Por un lado, decían que Bergoglio en ese momento era muy frío, calculador, autoritario y profundamente manipulador, ¿no? Hay otra parte que dice todo lo contrario.
Father Jorge, can we help you? The two of you have done great work here.
Thank you. We wish more of our brothers felt the same.
They are worried about your safety, as am I. These are dangerous times.
There is no politics in helping the poor.
Isn't that a little naive?
Perhaps you think that Jesus was naive too.
Father Giorgio, I've been both supportive and patient. I'm sorry, but I cannot permit you to work and live here anymore.
¿Cuál fue la reacción de Orlando Llorio y de Yalix frente al pedido de Bergoglio de que abandonaran la villa? Ellos se negaron a abandonar la villa. En ese interín, Bergoglio viaja a Roma y se entrevista con el padre Pedro Arrupe, que era el general de los jesuitas, y viene con una orden de Roma.
Come in.
Is this meeting necessary? We already told you of our decision.
Please. I wanted to hand you this in person. It's from Rome. You either leave the slums or leave the order. If they don't hear from you in 15 days, they'll assume you have resigned and you're no longer priests.
Is this what you want?
I would rather you come back to the fold to be with your brothers.
We are with our brothers in the slums.
Cuando Roma envía la carta y decreta el ad divinis, que se debe entender como que la iglesia ya no respaldaba a estos dos sacerdotes, que ya ni siquiera eran sacerdotes, eran nada. Y en una época de dictadura, eso era un riesgo, era un pasaporte a la muerte.
This is a communication to the people of Argentina. From this date, the country is under operational control of the military junta of the armed forces. We recommend to all inhabitants a strict compliance with the provisions and directives emanating from the military.
Blessed are you, Lord, God of all creation. Through your goodness we have this wine to offer. It will become our spiritual drink.
This is Father Bergoglio.
They have taken 2 of your priests.
What? Who is this?
Soldiers came and took Father Giorgio and Father Jalix.
When did this happen?
This morning. I have to go.
I think it's clear that Jorge Bergoglio took a very moderate path, tried his best he could to kind of keep the Jesuits out of trouble. I think he'd be the first to say that he made mistakes. And I think what we see in that experience for this Jorge Bergoglio is the emergence of a person who is aware of his brokenness.
La ESBA
era uno de los principales campos clandestinos de detención y desaparición, y al mismo tiempo un campo que se pensaba de reeducación de detenidos y desaparecidos.
What is your name?
Father Orlando Giorgio.
A priest. Tell me, why does a man of the cloth befriend terrorists?
I don't know any terrorists.
Of course you do.
Think hard. There must be one name that comes to mind.
I don't know any!
Nomine Patri, et Filii, et Spiritus Sancti.
El gran interrogante es, ¿Jorge Bergoglio se siente responsable o culpable de lo que le pasó realmente a Giorgio y a Yalix? Yo creo que sí que él se siente culpable. Es imposible que alguien no pueda sentirse culpable por más diferencias que tuviera con dos jesuitas, estos fueran secuestrados, torturados y estuvieran a punto de morir.
I know nothing of any priest's disappearance.
They are Father Giorgio and Father Yalix. They were taken on Sunday, May 23rd.
I think we are mistaken, Father. Perhaps you have lost them.
No, it is you who have made a mistake. 2 of my priests were taken by the Navy. They have not been involved in any political activity and should be freed.
Father, please. Have some faith. We are not interested in priests, only subversives who are helping the guerrillas destroy our country.
Fuentes, Valencia, Kempes.
Every day in the detention center, ESMA, the guards would read out a list at 5 p.m. The people who were to be transferred. And they weren't to be transferred, they were to be killed. They were taken in planes and in helicopters out over the sea and dropped alive from the aircraft.
Hello?
It's Father Yalix.
It's Father Giorgio with you?
Yes. We've been released.
Nobody really knows why they were released. There are lots of different theories, and I'm sure that Bergoglio did play a part in the release of the men, having, as he felt, I think, in his heart, played a part in their kidnap in the first place.
Giorgio, por las torturas que recibió, quedó muy afectado físicamente y de salud, y su vida sacerdotal quedó truncada, se terminó. Francisco Jalix me dijo que él prefería no volver a remover, a abrir las heridas de esa época, que él había hablado con Bergoglio y que Bergoglio le había pedido perdón y que él le había perdonado.
Todos los días, de alguna u otra manera, nos hacemos daño. Pero lo que se nos pide es curar inmediatamente las heridas que nos causamos y restaurar los vínculos que se han dañado.
During the dictatorship, Esther de Carriaga came back into his life. He got a phone call from her, his old boss, the old communists in the chemistry lab.
I'm glad you have seen the light. Hello, Esther. It's good to see you.
I'm sorry to bring you here under false pretenses. But I'm in trouble. My daughter, Ana Maria, has been campaigning for the disappeared. Yesterday, she was taken.
I'm sorry.
I'm doing everything I can to get her released. I thought maybe you would be able to help.
I can make some phone calls, but she's outside of the church.
I know. I just don't know what to do.
Each Thursday, the mothers of the plaza gather in the Plaza de Mayo to demand that the thousands of disappeared be returned alive.
My child has disappeared without an explanation. I have asked the authorities for help, and all I get is silence.
Why doesn't anybody say something?
I don't know where she is. If she's sick or hungry, dead or alive.
Why doesn't anybody speak out against the military?
It's not just my child. Thousands have been taken.
Esther campaigned to get her daughter released, and she succeeded. Her daughter was released. Esther decided to carry on working for the freeing of the other detainees, and by doing that, she signed her own death warrant.
Entre los meses de abril y mayo de 2005 fueron identificados los restos de nuestras madres, Esther Balestrino de Cariaga, María Ponce de Bianco y Azucena Villaflor de Vincenti, integrantes de las primeras madres de Plaza de Mayo.
La Perla, 5.000 detenidos desaparecidos. La ESMA, 4.500 detenidos desaparecidos. Campo de Mayo, 6.000 detenidos desaparecidos. Cientos de pequeños lugares en Argentina. ¿Dónde estaba Dios?
When Esther's body was found in the sea and identified, Bergoglio authorized that she should be given a burial in sacred ground as a gesture of respect. He did it because he said she was a great woman. She had a profound influence on me, and she was somebody who at a very formative stage in his life had made him see something deep about the humanity of individuals. And that was the start of the process which began the transformation of Bergoglio from this strict, authoritarian, conservative figure into this gentle, warm, listening, kind man that we see as Pope today.
The one thing I think that we need to understand about papacy and about popes is that this is an institution to which every figure, elected and named, comes with his own personal endowments. I see him as a pope, which is a guy who's got his act together, not discouraged by anything, the challenges and all of that, who prays a lot for inspiration to be able to do what he has to do.
I see Pope Francis as a pope, not just for the church, but for the entire world in this moment of planetary emergency. And we are not realizing that, that our home is literally crumbling. I think Pope Francis is leading the efforts of the world, of many people, in what he would say, caring for our common home.
We live in an extraordinary living earth community. And it's speaking to us all the time. As the seasons change, the fall and its spectacular beauty of trees and so on, the winter and the snows coming, and then spring and new life, and summer blossoming and greenness. This cycle of death and renewal, that's part of the Christian tradition.
Pope Francis is really advancing the message of love, of joy, of peace. And in such a polarized and divided world, we need, to receive this message and to find ways to implement it.
What I see is a Pope who has clearly defined who he is, what he believes in, and reorganized the Vatican to reflect what he thinks.
So the point is, this is so timely for the religions to come together to say justice and peace, love for humans, but love for all of creation is absolutely essential. And I think especially with the next generation, because they see the spiritual and the scientific as having something to say to our moment.
I often hear Pope Francis repeating, he says, what gives him hope in this area is, one thing is young people, children, youth. He says, what kind of world are we leaving to our children and to future generations?
But between despair and hope, there's a joyful path forward that the Pope is signaling. You are part of the solutions. You are the future of the planet. That's what he's saying to you.
Non aver paura di custodire la terra che è madre di tutti. Dobbiamo riportarla ai nostri figli, migliorata, custodita, perché è stato un prestito che loro hanno fatto a noi.
Sometimes people ask me, why did Laudato Si get so much of reception? Why was it received so well? I said the message is beautiful, but also came from the right messenger. And that is the person we have in Pope Francis.